This is Joe Mullings and the MRI Network. And joining us today is Alden Galvanek from the Chatham Group in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Joe. Thanks for having me.
You bet. It's going to be fun. We had a nice conversation. I think it was yesterday on the phone, and it went by way too fast. But I wanted to jump in today and take us through the history of Chatham Group.
Sure. So we actually opened our doors in 2004, sort of right in the middle of the year, June, July, August. I kind of forget the years haze by, but we opened up because my father at the time, who was president of a global consulting firm, wanted to start something new. I was a young buck at that point. I was graduating from Rutgers, looking for my next path. So he leveraged his skill sets in the chemicals industry, all of his insight and all of his contacts. We decided, let's go to Cleveland. Let's talk to MRI. Let's open up a franchise. Let's do it together, and it'll be a grandiose thing. And we decided to open up in 2004. We've rode some interesting highs and lows throughout then, but it's been a journey. So we started specifically in chemicals, the chemical industry, focusing on engineering, sales, manufacturing, and then we sort of branched out into other avenues or tangential industries from there to what we have today.
How many desks are in the office?
Let's see, we have specialty chemicals, we have advanced materials, we actually have a specialty gas desk, and that's a whole fun story on how the heck we got involved in specialty gases. Plastics engineering as well. So 4 or 5 functioning desks right now.
So how would I differentiate gases from specialty gases? No pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to tell you the story of how we actually got into the specialty gas. We were calling on paint and coatings companies, and we were doing the impact flavor approach. And we called one company that was labeled the SIC code as paints and coatings. We pitched a great paint coating sales guy to them. And they said, this guy sounds really good, but he's paints and coatings. Yeah, right? That's good for you guys. Do you know what we do? You paints and coatings, right? No, we're specialty gases. What is specialty gases? We had a great conversation. We actually got 2 or 3 job orders from him for spec gas salespeople. We knew nothing about the industry, so we sort of dove in head first, took that on. Since then, we've been very fortunate, and the guy that's heading up that desk for us right now, his name is Bob Grassoff. We affectionately call him Iceman. Yeah, we have cool names here at the Chatham Group. And Iceman actually was a former director of mergers and acquisitions, worked his way up to one of the biggest specialty gas companies in the world. And he's heading up the specialty gas desk for us right now. Wow. He's actually doing pretty good right now during this time.
You know, it's funny. Everybody who has a desk specialty has a story on how it got there, right? You know, we started medical device just by accident from a client who was in the valve business in 1990. And since then, we've made 7,000 placements in medical device.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it was just like, hey, do you want to do a valve for this medical device company? I'm like, sure. And much like you, we started to dig in. Yeah. I'm like, this has got legs.
You just say yes, even if you don't know anything about the industry. Sure, we could do that. Absolutely. And then you frantically go and research it afterwards.
Right. Now that was 2004. It was still early enough pre-heavy load on internet research because you used the word SIC code. Would you explain to the youngins what a SIC code, SIC code is?
Yeah, sure. So when we opened this office in 2004, we had LexisNexis, and we downloaded, it was a government code that they stuck on every industry, and they're pretty much saying this industry is gases and that code is 5247, whatever it was, and we downloaded every name and number we possibly could in that particular industry, and we had a list of over 4,000 names when we started, and every day we would just market, call the next number based on that code from LexisNexis, where we downloaded our original list of contacts.
And you built your business that way by learning and calling and listening and putting it into a bucket.
Exactly. And actually the success ratio back then, it's insane when you think about it. But when we had 4,000 names, we got 12 job orders at the end of those 4,000 names, which led to like 3 or 4 really good clients at the end of that. And that was the start. So 4,000 names, success ratio down to 12 job orders to 3 good clients. It's crazy when you look at it, but that's the beautiful thing about this business. You only need a couple good clients and it can make your year, right? So you just stick with them and then you build really solid relationships with them after that.
Yeah. So for the old schoolers online, I just want to jump in, and I started in '89. There was not the internet. There was barely a fax machine, and the SIC codes, bringing that back to me mine was 34 something. It's usually a 4-digit code. And all you got was the name of the company, the address, and more than 50 employees, less than 200 employees, and a phone number. And you actually had to call in and work your way from there. So the old schoolers will appreciate that. And that's how you really should build a desk. You really should.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're bringing back memories of gatekeeper pitches too that we had to give back then. There was the facilitator, the accommodator, the interrogator, and you had to structure your entire conversation around getting through those people nicely. So,
and in the first 5 seconds, you had to actually put them in a bucket in the first 5 seconds, or else you're going to blow the call.
Exactly. Yeah. And you always really prayed for that accommodator.
Yeah. Or you called it lunchtime because you had the fill-in gatekeeper who wasn't as adept at deflecting the calls.
They wanted to accommodate you.
That's right.
Just get you where they wanted.
That's it. So you said your dad and yourself kicked off the business in 2004. And
yes, sir.
How's that dynamic? Do tell.
So it's really interesting. And I know there's a couple other office owners out there that have this relationship between father and son. And I say the first couple of years were a little interesting. It wasn't tumultuous, though. It wasn't like we were vying for power struggles, because I took the approach of, I need to learn this. I'm coming out of school. I needed to know how to speak to CEOs and leverage my skill set to help their business. He had come from an industry where he had a lot of knowledge, a lot of connections, a lot of education. So I literally started from a PC position, project coordinator back then, worked my way up to sort of a key account position here, did some marketing, and then took over mostly operational functions. So throughout that time, he was Tom in the office. Okay. It wasn't, hey, Dad. No, how you doing, Dad? It was no Tom. Tom says this, and you separate that relationship out, and it became a very healthy thing because I didn't take anything personally. Nothing was personal because it was business at the end of the day. And that sort of has become the foundation to how we deal with things moving forward. And now I find it pretty successful where it's really a partnership where we consult with each other. We have our own opinions on where we're going, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. And we sort of leverage each other's ideas and pull in with unbelievable transparency the rest of our people here, because it's not necessarily a me and Tom thing or a me thing and a Tom thing or an us versus the company thing. We really try and leverage everybody's opinion of what we should do and pull them in, creating a culture of inclusion and transparency. So it's been pretty good. And we're actually part of Next Gen. I don't know if you want me to speak on this.
Yeah, let's cover that. I've just found out about that recently, and it sounds a very, very interesting, fascinating arrangement. Tell me.
Yeah, so Next Gen, it's a way of highlighting the people like me that are coming up to full ownership of companies. And that could either be account executives taking over teams inside organizations. That could be people that are taking over full ownership of companies. And it's putting inside corporate an environment of like-minded people where we can share, we can grow, we can adapt with one another, we can literally leverage each other's backgrounds, skill sets, things that we've done crazy wrong, and communicate and share with one another to sort of rise everybody up together in a community inside of MRI. And it's something that's very new. This is the first time they've done it. And I've been to 3 or 4 of the global Next Gen sessions, and I love it. I mean, Annette Worley, who heads this thing up, does an amazing job one-on-one with you, and then getting you leveraged and connected in with other office structures so that you can see what they're doing, grow from them, learn from them, and change, really.
Does the Next Gen have to be a DNA pass-off, or could it just be succession planning pass-off?
It could be succession planning pass-offs. And I don't want it to be like it's a next generation owner.
Right.
I think about it like this. It's a next generation leader, right? And it could be somebody internal to a company. Like I said, an account executive that's either taken over ownership of a company or an account executive that's stepping into the role of leadership for a one-person account executive underneath them, or a 5-person team, or a 10-person team, or a company, just getting them used to that next level of responsibility of empowering people underneath them.
So you've got, if I do my math, you've got 16 years in the business since you opened in 04.
Yes, sir.
And how would you break down the first 5, the second 5, and the last 5 or 6?
That's a great question. And they're all completely different. The first 5, we tried very hard to just figure out what the heck we were doing. It was a very tactical approach to learning the system. What is the database? How do you use the database? How do you have conversations with clients? How do we hire internally? What positions do we hire internally? And you're sort of living day to day. And the first 1 to 2 years was really trying to survive the start of it. And then you hire a couple people, and we grew our office before the 2008 debacle. We grew it to about an 18-person firm. Wow. We were doing pretty successful. We had sort of over leveraged ourselves at that point, where we had a desk in construction, medical devices, biotechnologies, PR. I still don't even know how you develop a business in PR, but we had a desk back then for PR, advertising and marketing. And we tried to hire people to grow, because we thought the way you grow is just hire people to do these things, right? And I don't think we supported them well enough. And at that time, we came into our office, we had ties, we had the nice pants, we had leather shoes. Nobody could go home until they hit their 100 points on the board, their metrics and their job orders. And it was very metrics driven. And I think now, looking back, it was kind of stale, because it was just focused on business per se, and there wasn't personality yet. And if you think about it, we were a national business. We were a new business trying to grow. Okay. Fast forward the next 5 years, the second 5 years, we're sort of another survival period, because we survived the 2008 decimation of a lot of industries, and a lot of other MRI firms did not survive that. And we went back down to 3 people.
Wow.
Okay. It was myself, Tom, and we had one other account executive with us, and we had to start over. So from 2 people to 18 to 3 people, and that was a sort of a big.
How was that on the ego?
I was just going to say that, Joe. I was like, that was a big ego hit. That was the term I was looking. How do you start over from that? But you just focus day to day on, this time, doing it right. And at the time, they were talking about like lean and mean. You know, a lot of companies are going down to lean, less people for more work, and getting efficient. So at that time, we leveraged that as a lesson: how to code people correctly in the database, what we really needed to focus on with regards to internal processes moving forward, what positions really are key to grow, and what industries we want to go after, instead of just this all or nothing approach where we're just hiring people to grow the business. No, now we wanted to support them adequately. We wanted to give them an environment that nurtured their growth and helped them grow, but they had to be tied to that center of specialty chemicals. Okay. So it could be a tangent of that. I mean, like plastics or rubbers, or,
sure. But chemical processing of some sort.
It had to be something like that, exactly, so that we can support them through the difficult times. Okay. So we then hired, instead of bulk hiring, we were doing one hire at a time, slowly. And we've got up to, since then, what I always like to call a very successful mid-sized recruiting company. And we've never broached that big firm feel where we have 10 people. We actually just hired somebody at this period. I told you yesterday, just hired somebody. So we're now at the 11-person level, but each hire is now strategic. It has to be tied back to the core. Yeah. So that's the second 5 years. And then these last 5 have been riding the waves of technology, where, and I think one thing we've done well, stay ahead of the curve with regards to technology. We were remote. And Joe, I'm telling you, there's 2 people in my office right now. We're a 2,000 square foot office. and everyone else is full-time remote.
Really?
And we've been, not just because of the current situation, we have been this way for the last 2.5 years.
What was the impetus for that?
So what happened, this was probably 7 or 8 years ago, we were at a regional MRI meeting, and one of the vendors was pitching, maybe it's longer than 7 years, Link, Microsoft Link, and it was a VoIP technology. We've always really been fascinated with good technologies that could leverage us to the next level. So we decided to take that on. We scrapped all of our desk phones. We really took on technology and put VoIP systems when they just started in. And then we transitioned from, and I don't want to say any names because there's an undercurrent here to this, but we transitioned from one database system to a new, what I like to say, a more robust, all-inclusive database system. And then they started to tie in VoIP systems there. Then they started to tie in email. And what we did, kind of half intentionally, is we've turned the whole business into something where people could do it from anywhere. They can go to the beach, and we were at one of my brother's weddings one time, and we were making placements on the beach because all of our systems were inclusive to like a laptop with our phone, the database, with the email. And this was years and years ago that we did this. So when we set people up with the collaboration of corporate on training them really well, and then mentoring them internally, giving them a structure and systems that could go anywhere, it fell into this natural remote environment, and everybody is here. We respect them enough so that they've been doing that for the last 2 years.
How do you launch them in the first 60 days? Are they in the office or are they remote then too?
Well, that's another great question. And if I go back historically, when we first tried to do remote about 6-7 years ago, we did not have them in the office inclusive, totally. And the first 4 or 5 times we tried it, there were dismal failures. Okay. But also the technology wasn't quite up to speed then with constant connectivity. So now, ideally, if I were to recommend new offices going to remote, ideally, the first 30 to 60 days are crucial, where corporate is involved with training, you're hand-holding them, you're getting them used to the systems inside the company, and then learning from the bullpen environment is really essential. And I would probably argue that the first 6 months to a year is essential for somebody to just hear how things are going around you. But if you can't do that, the next best thing is intentional communication with people when they're first starting. And I mean like constant communication. When they're learning, you're calling them and you're celebrating little successes over text messages, over the constant communication of phone calls, over emails, and you establish that intentionality of communication with them.
Love that.
And that helps that initial period.
Do you work a desk?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
And I say that, but when things go crazy, yeah, I still jump back on.
But I was curious how you manage that intentional communication, that high cadence of high value. Are you the person who's driving that with each of the individuals on the team?
I'd say yes. And this is the way I structure it. We gave a couple presentations to other offices thinking about doing remote, and I structure the week very intentionally, where every Monday and at the end of the week, I call them bookend meetings, okay, where everybody has to be part of this. It doesn't matter what they're doing. They have to be involved with this. And then the beginning of the week, I pull up Bullhorn, and I pull up all of the jobs we have, and I share our screen, and we go over every single job, what's going on, what the hiring authority is doing, how many candidates we have in the system, and let everybody see that, because it creates a collaboration effect where they hear the clients, they hear the relationships, they could learn from the problems or from the successes of those people, okay? Now, the end of that week is sort of a close where everybody's there, and instead of pulling up the jobs, we say, what's going on? How was the week? How was that based on our discussion on Monday? And give everybody this ability to share things, right? A little bit more freely. Now, in between that, this is what's important, okay? That sets the precedent and that closes the week, even though for recruiters, it doesn't really close the week. Right. Saturdays and Sundays, people are talking. Right. Then in the middle, I have a very purposeful conversation with each of the remote people once a week. It's scheduled on my calendar, where I call them up, and it literally is just, Joe, how you doing? What's on your mind? And you be quiet and you shut up for a little bit and you just hear what's going on with them. And that always drives itself into more purposeful purposeful conversations. And I use that for, helping with problems, celebrating the successes with them, empowering them, showing them that I'm really here to support them. And you asked a good question. Who does that? If a good remote office is to be successful, there has to be a person in that position that's constantly empowering and supporting and keeping the communication intentional and there.
Yeah. Do you have scheduled in-person get-togethers with the team, quarterly, monthly, weekly?
So far, we do. We always do business planning at the end of the year. And ideally, we have twice a year contacts where people come into the office and we sort of meet and greet and take everybody out to lunch. And we're actually kind of transitioning that right now because corporate's transitioning. MRI is transitioning a lot of things with United meetings. Pace setter meetings are changing, the next gen meetings, top 50 office meetings. So the plan now is to actually leverage those as the 2-time-a-year get-togethers where we could pull everybody together to see each other, and we take them out to dinner. We celebrate as a group, and we do things as an office there, and that stands in for that like in-person meeting with one another.
That's great. That's great to focus around that. I love that content around remote, and I think given what we're going through right now, you're going to see a little bit more flexibility in individuals and organizations that will say, I might do a remote thing. And it also opens up borders that it doesn't have to be somebody necessarily who's commutable to the office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And I'm sorry, you go for it, buddy.
You go ahead. I want to hear what you want to say.
I was just going to say, I had that conversation with some of our people inside, and it almost forces you to look at the telecommunicating model, right? The remote model. And I think what a lot of offices are seeing right now, once you start to let go a little bit of that control, like we ever really have control over people inside of an office. But once you learn to let go a little bit, you're either going to find that it can be successful or it's a dismal failure. Why is it a dismal failure? What can I do better to make that improvement inside the company? But yeah, I think you're right. I think there's going to be someone, Mike Muller, I'll give a shout out to him. He's one of our recruiters. He anticipates a 10% retention for total remote work moving forward in most industries, because they're seeing how it works live right now because they have to.
Yeah, and you'll just adjust your workflow and adjust your communication styles, and I think you'll get people leaning back into the industry that may have worked for another firm that literally closed its doors and may call you up and say, listen, I do chem. I saw you on the podcast with Joe, and I'm looking for a desk, and that would be a really nice opportunity for both you and them.
Absolutely. And we'd encourage that.
Cool.
That'd be good.
Cool. Well, listen, I do appreciate this. This has been fantastic. I love some of the subjects you cut into, and you're absolutely crushing it down there. And you're in Chapel Hill, sort of God's country too. It's very nice down there.
Yeah, and I'm a northern boy, man.
You said Rutgers. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey, central New Jersey, and I worked in and out of New York City for a little while. So coming down here, different worlds. Love it, though.
Well, I appreciate your time today, certainly, and your generosity with sharing all this info.
Good. Well, you're awesome, Joe. You're encouraging out there. I'm super glad to have you aboard. Corporate's doing amazing things, and we are very happy to be part of this moving forward. So thanks, Joe.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Thanks again. This has been Joe Mullings with the MRI Network.